Morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Alrighty. A little like Matthew McConaughey there. I hope everybody's doing well this morning. Good morning. It is the 26th of September, 2023, and it's Resistance Live, and I'm ECM. It's nice to see you all here. And I have to say that I have a very long list today. We've had an enormous amount of legal breaking news this morning. Really kind of unusually dense list. So first things first, I am wearing a black cashmere boat neck sweater today. My hair is down. I got up early and worked out, you guys, and I feel like $1 million this morning. So that's good. And my blonde hair is down. I have green eyes, pink skin. I'm wearing like my favorite snake ring this morning from H&M that wraps around my finger 3 times. And I'm coming to you, as always, from occupied Tongva land here in Southern California. My pronouns are she, her. Hello. Okay. So I'm going to start with the obvious, because this is actually kind of like old news now, but it was so much fun that I just wanted everybody to have a moment to kind of like enjoy their Schadenfreude this morning, which is that Cassidy Hutchinson's interview last night on Rachel Maddow was amazing. I mean, just like truly great. And, I have to remind everybody always that she's still a Republican and she's still going to be a Republican and she still worked for Trump. And, there's all sorts of reasons to not, deify her. All right. And at the same time, it's very clear that since leaving and deciding to testify, she's had a number of moments, as she herself said last night, where she really has woken up to the fact that some of the things that she witnessed and many of the things that she believed were not actually accurate. And so it's really interesting to watch this kind of transformation. And I will say that she is so well prepared, first of all, because I'm just going to say one of the things that I saw in that as a lawyer was just how well media trained she is. She was so careful in the way that she responded to the questions that she was asked. And at the same time, she is very clearly a very strong human being. And I am really just fascinated by her reappearance. I felt like the interview last night was totally riveting. My great moment last night, in addition to everything else, I mean, look, let me just say this. It's very clear she wants the Republican Party to abandon Donald Trump. That seems to be a big chunk of her motivation right now, because for very good reasons, right? And I have more to say on that in a minute, because we had a really explicit question about that this morning. But I just want folks to also understand that, Matt Gaetz did something incredibly misogynistic in response to the fact that Cassidy Hutchinson reported that he essentially sexually harassed her twice on the job. He claimed that they had dated in Florida. And if you missed this, she said, Matt Gaetz and I never dated. I have much higher standards than that. And also, he's a really unserious politician, as the current moment demonstrates. And she was kind of laughing through that. And it was so scathing in the most smart and carefully worded way. It was sort of, mind-blowing to witness. She wasn't mean. She didn't go over the top. She said something that literally cut him off at the knees, and it was beautiful. I mean, it was beautiful. And I wasn't alone in that. Like, Joy Reid last night, for those of you who are kind of like paying attention on Threads, was like laughing her head off while all of that was going on, just in the way in which it was presented. So, I mean, it was a great moment. And if you haven't seen the footage, I strongly suggest you go find it. I'm not going to say that any of it's going to stop Matt Gaetz from being Matt Gaetz, but at the same time, it was really necessary, because the allegation that he made that he had dated her was just so gross, right? And I mean, so even the come-ons, and the sexual harassment was gross. So it needed that kind of, Jen's saying it right. It needed that exact kind of calm, cool, and collected response that, basically put to rest the idea that there was any kind of room for what Matt Gaetz had claimed. So in any event, it's really good to see you all. I just want to say, by the way, we got a lot of international viewers here today. It's nice to see you all. Thank you for joining us. Hello to Amsterdam. Hello to Bangkok. Hello to, I saw somebody else here who was coming in, Sweden, as usual. Nice to see you. So anyway, great to see all of our international viewers as well. Thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate you. Okay. The other big breaking news this morning, which happened right when I was actually like waking up here in Southern California, was that the Supreme Court, and I predicted this, I'm just going to say this. I know a lot of people were really worried that like somehow Kavanaugh was going to change his mind. He did not. This morning, the Supreme Court rejected the Alabama Republican legislature's appeal of their failure to comply with the Supreme Court's case that came down in May that said they had to redistrict to include a second majority Black district. And this is about as cold a rejection as anyone can expect to get from the Supreme Court. It was one sentence and it was unanimous. So I just want everybody to, at least understand that for the moment, we're not going to look a gift horse in the mouth, and we're going to be really grateful that we have landed at a place where the Supreme Court is going to require Alabama to comply. So what that means is that as the Court of Appeals had already ruled, a special master is now going to determine how Alabama is going to be redistricted to comply with Supreme Court authority. And that's going to be done by like this week. So we will have a second majority Black district in Alabama. That's very good news for the House of Representatives. Also really good news for Alabama, which, has an enormous population of Black folks who have been underrepresented in the federal government forever. And so I'm really glad that that worked out in exactly the way that we expected. I honestly didn't think that the Supreme Court was going to have a lot of tolerance for a state just like flat out defying its ruling. So that's very, very good news this morning. And again, it's out of the hands of the Alabama Republican legislature right now, so they can't even do anything about this at this point. It's kind of like the final word. So it's great. All right. Other serious legal decisions in the last 24 hours. Judge McAfee in Fulton County, Georgia, issued an order saying that the identity of all jurors has to stay confidential. That goes down to descriptions of what they look like and any sketches of them from inside the courtroom. So we all know why this is taking place. It's taking place because grand jurors have been threatened, because we had incidents in prior juries in January 6th defendant cases in DC where the jurors clearly were afraid that they were going to be personally targeted with violence, like while they were mid deliberation. And so all of this is very good news. I wish it wasn't necessary, but I'm not surprised at all by this ruling by Judge McAfee. And it does mean that there will be not just one, but many layers of protection on behalf of the jurors who are going to be sitting in the cases in Fulton County, Georgia. So that's very, very good news. All right. Judge Cannon, the judge in the classified documents case, not just classified documents, but the National Archives documents case, the Espionage Act case, let's call it that, because that one's a little bit more sexy. The Espionage Act case against Donald Trump in Florida issued an order yesterday concerning a challenge to the representation of Trump's co-defendants in that matter. Now, you all will remember that we discussed last week that Fani Willis had also written this notice in Fulton County about the fact that there appeared to be conflicts on the defense attorney side in that matter as well. In federal court, this is what's called a Garcia challenge or a Garcia hearing. It's named after a particular court case that is precedent that says that prosecutors essentially have a right to inquire as to whether or not the representation of the defendants is adequate because they could have conflicts of interest with regard to witnesses. Now, what is ordinarily supposed to happen in this scenario is that an independent attorney is appointed for the defendants in question for purposes of the Garcia hearing. Surprise, surprise, Judge Cannon is not doing that. What she has done instead, and again, this is not unusual. Setting a hearing is not unusual, but the fact that she is not allowing them to have independent counsel is sketch. She has set a hearing to hear testimony about whether or not the defendants, Walt Nauta and the second defendant, whose name is now escaping me, in that case, whether or not their attorneys have conflicts of interest with regard to the witnesses that they may be cross-examining, i.e. they have represented those witnesses. Again, I'm going to remind you all, this is a part of the situation that has been of concern to so many people, and that also came up last night, by the way, in Cassidy Hutchinson's interview, about the fact that the lawyers that are being paid for by Trump are not independent. Right? They do not appear to be independent. They do not appear to be giving adequate representation to some of these defendants, at least. And so this hearing on the Garcia question in the Southern District of Florida is one that is checking a box. However, do I think that Judge Cannon is going all the way to the wall to make sure that these defendants have adequate representation? No, I do not. And I don't think this is surprising. I also will just point out that the setting of a hearing on this was long delayed. As with everything else, Judge Cannon seems to be delaying to prevent Trump from going to trial in that case for as long as humanly possible. And I don't think we should have any expectations that she's going to do anything, I don't know, fair and equitable here, I guess is the way to put it, even though she's supposed to based on her oath of office. Okay. That hearing, by the way, is set for the 12th of October. It makes literally no sense that it is that far out. Like, she could hold a hearing on this in like 3 days. Okay. One other thing that folks should be aware of, I mean, there's so many, but okay. Hunter Biden has sued Rudy Giuliani and his colleagues this morning for federal criminal conduct with regard to his laptop. And I'm just going to remind everybody, this is a civil case, but it alleges violations of federal law with regard to, so it's not a prosecution, of course, because you need a prosecutor. It's a civil fraud case alleging that Rudy and his friends violated federal law by interfering with Hunter Biden's laptop. And again, I got to say, this is the third case in 2 weeks that Hunter Biden has filed. This is Hunter Biden fighting back, and I'm all in favor of it because so many laws have been broken with regard to this. And, you know, that's leaving aside all the other unethical things that have happened as a result. I do not expect that this is going to be resolved anytime soon. So I just want people to have like a realistic timetable here. You know, civil litigation in federal court usually takes a minimum of 18 months to resolve. But all that said, I am very happy to see Hunter Biden finally taking a stand that says the way in which I've been treated is wrong. And I think it's very legitimate for him to be doing this. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Okay. Also this morning, Fani Willis has filed her opposition brief in the 11th Circuit appeal of Mark Meadows, seeking to exercise federal jurisdiction and remove him from Fulton County. It only dropped like 45 minutes before I went on the air. I had time to skim the brief, not read it very thoroughly, but I will just give you my initial first impressions, which are that it is extremely solid, that, you know, the judge's order, we said this at the time that it came out, Judge Jones's order from the Northern District of Virginia, is an extremely strong order. And there's really no basis in law or fact for Mark Meadows to succeed in front of the 11th Circuit. Now, I'm going to remind everybody this is on an expedited appeal schedule. We're expecting a reply brief from Mark Meadows within the next few days. And, you know, I never say never, but I will just tell you, I don't think he stands a snowball's chance in hell of winning this one. And the brief is really strong. You know, this is actually in some sense like a very easy case at this point. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But again, that case is moving apace. And, you know, we're still waiting on Judge Jones's ruling on Ken Clark and others. But, you know, in light of the fact that Mark Meadows had what was arguably the strongest case for removal and he lost, I don't think we're going to see anybody else be removed. Okay. JPMorgan this morning settled a civil case with the U.S. Virgin Islands concerning their support of Jeffrey Epstein. For those of you who don't know, the U.S. Virgin Islands sued JPMorgan Chase, alleging various violations of banking law concerning Jeffrey Epstein's continuous funding and what was essentially money laundering through the bank itself. This is not a small settlement. JPMorgan settled for $75 million with the U.S. Virgin Islands, and also on behalf of the banker in question, who continued to push for Jeffrey Epstein to stay a client of JPMorgan Chase, notwithstanding the fact that there were an enormous number of very questionable transactions moving through the bank. So that is also a very positive development this morning. And folks should, you know, be aware of that. All right. Moving on to other matters. Oh my goodness. I mean, again, this list is like so long today. Okay. First and foremost, more and more Democrats are coming out in favor of Robert Menendez resigning. This morning, Cory Booker, who is his junior colleague as a senator from New Jersey, called for Menendez to resign. There are various other folks on the Democratic side in the last 24 hours who have also called for resignation. I think that we're seeing a growing wave here in the Democrats to move in the direction of pushing Menendez to resign. I'm going to remind everybody, Andy Lee is already running for that seat. There was already breaking news this morning as well that Governor Murphy's wife has been, there has been like something of a recruitment effort to get her to run for that Senate seat. I honestly think Andy Lee stands a better chance, but we're going to have to see how this shakes out. And obviously if Menendez resigns, Murphy's going to have to appoint his successor, and it wouldn't really be very cool to appoint his wife. So I think we're going to see how all of this should fly, in the coming weeks. Now, Menendez gave a very off-the-rails press conference yesterday saying that he wouldn't resign. And I don't know how long that's going to last. I'm also just going to say that, he can, of course, be removed from committees. He can also be expelled from the Senate. We don't quite have that degree of groundswell yet, but we will. Andy Kim is running, as I said. And my suspicion is that Andy Kim is the more likely appointed successor in the event that Menendez resigned. Did I say something wrong? Maybe I said his name. Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. Andy Kim, not Andy Lee. Andy Kim. I am confusing this because there's been breaking news this morning about Barbara Lee in the news. More on that in a minute. Not necessarily breaking news, but I'll get to that in a second. Okay. So in any event, we're watching what's happening with Menendez, and I want everybody to kind of have their eyes wide open that his refusal to resign is now in the face of multiple calls to resign by Democrats. Okay. Let's get to what relates to Barbara Lee, which is that somebody asked a question this morning about these breaking allegations against Adam Schiff. So I'm going to remind everybody that we have just an incredible and what will end up being a very incredibly expensive Senate primary underway here in California to replace Dianne Feinstein. There are various endorsements moving around here. Karen Bass has already endorsed Barbara Lee. We have Adam Schiff running as well. And we also have Katie Porter, my rep. And it is a hotly contested primary already. Some very, and this is a hard one because like all three of the candidates are incredibly qualified. All right. What we had yesterday and into this morning was a series of breaking news about Adam Schiff and earmarks. Now, I'm going to be very fair and balanced in the way that I report this, not in the Fox News sense, but like in the sense of like, I don't know how serious this is. All right. So if you go digging into the reporting on this that's on Politico, and I have to remind everybody that Politico is a fairly conservative news source at this point. It's definitely like moderate to right wing. But they reported that Adam Schiff had delegated some earmarks back when these kind of earmarks were legal. So he did this between 2001 and 2007. That's how old these allegations are. They're like 22 to 15 years old. All right. Back in the day, before 2010, when the regulations changed, it was legal to designate certain earmarks to certain companies in your own district or industries in your own district out of federal funds. All right. And this was very normal. It was not something that, was limited to like corrupt officials, right? It was legal. And various politicians took advantage of it in various ways to send money back to their districts. All right. Adam Schiff did this with regard to certain military contractors, as well as certain like really honorable causes, like organizations that support the unhoused, organizations that were designed to assist folks who, were struggling with poverty and hunger. So, it's one of those situations where in light of the time limit, the fact that these things were totally legal until up until 2010, and the fact that we're talking about something that was 15 years old, I don't know that it's really like a scandal. And I'm going to add that, there are various officials who have called for the return of earmarks in recent years for exactly some, not all, of the types of organizations to which Adam Schiff had already routed money. For instance, others in this race, including Barbara Lee, have called for earmarks to be returned so that organizations that support the unhoused and that are seeking to end poverty can get designated federal funds. So I'm not sure this is really that big of a deal. And, I also just want various folks to kind of be aware that this is one of those areas where you could raise concerns about corporate earmarks versus like nonprofit earmarks. But again, I think the nuance of this and the circumstances around it are really not that questionable. And, these were, in some instances, companies that had donated to his campaign. Again, back in the day, this was not unusual. So I don't know. I mean, I think that, I think there's various concerns here about what's going on, and I am just going to say that I think that this is probably going to end up being something of a nothing burger. Okay. I want as well to just remind everybody that one of the things that is going to happen in this primary, because it is so hotly contested, is there's going to be a lot of opposition research done among the three candidates. And so, there's already been allegations against Katie that some of her staff aren't happy, former staff, not current staff, because I know a lot of the current staff and a lot of the former staff, but that there are certain staff that aren't happy with her because she was not pleased with some of the ways in which the 2022 campaign was run. And I want folks to be, mindful of the fact that there's going to be these stories that are kind of like not all that significant that may come out about this. These are three incredibly qualified candidates. This is a really tough race. And, again, we're going to see what happens and what develops out of this, but I would not consider this to be terribly significant. Okay. Another issue that I just want to mention. I skipped over one final legal issue for the morning, which is that there was a ruling out of the Southern District of California this morning by a judge that was appointed by George W. Bush, who is a senior status judge, very conservative, that California's ban on high-capacity magazines for guns is unconstitutional. Now, I'm just going to tell you all, I don't think this is going to be upheld on appeal. First of all, this ban on high-capacity magazines has been in effect since 2016. And the challenge on it is a straight Second Amendment challenge, which doesn't really have much teeth. So, again, I just really don't want anybody to think, we had a situation here in California like 2 years ago where another really conservative judge overturned the ban on assault weapons, and that didn't survive a minute in the Ninth Circuit. So even though this ruling itself is really bad, I'm not terribly concerned about it from an appellate standpoint. I don't really think there's a chance in hell that this opinion is going to be upheld on appeal. So it's not great. And I know that the Second Amendment supporters, I have to be a little careful with my language here sometimes. The Second Amendment supporters are not are very pleased about this ruling. All right, they're not holding back in the way in which they are expressing their glee. All right, and I just have to say that I think it's a very short window that this is going to be the way it is. I don't think it's something that is likely to stand on appeal. Okay. Let's see. We have a looming Newsom and DeSantis debate that is going to be hosted on Fox News. I think the reason this is happening is honestly, I have to say that I think this is brilliant strategy on the part of the DNC and on the part of the Biden administration. Let me just tell you why. First of all, Gavin Newsom is being sent to the second Republican debate tomorrow night, which is in California, by the way, at the Ronald Reagan Library, to do on-the-fly responses to what the Republicans are saying on the debate stage. I think it's genius. I just have to say, I think it's genius. There are very few Democrats out there who, first of all, don't have any political baggage in terms of their skin in the game right now to be as upfront and scathing about what the Republicans are saying as Gavin Newsom. He's incredibly good at the messaging, all right? So that in and of itself is brilliant. But the other thing about this debate between Newsom and DeSantis is that it is a clear opportunity for Gavin Newsom, again, without any skin on the game. He's not up for re-election right now. There's not anything about his position that is currently in jeopardy, and he's not in the Biden administration, and he's independent from like what the administration and the re-election campaign are doing. All right. He has every opportunity here to just like bury Ron DeSantis. And I frankly think it is so smart to do this, because just in the same way that the Republicans want their shiny objects, this is something that is going to be like must-see TV. Like I said yesterday, this is like UFC level politics, all right? And we all know who the better fighter is. So again, I think this is just, an incredibly interesting strategy to send Newsom out as like the fighter, to say things that Biden himself couldn't say. And I think it's a really strong call. So I think the debate's going to be wild. I'm going to try not to have too much glee about it, but I think the opportunity is there for like Newsom to really like end DeSantis and his policies once and for all. And by the way, if you haven't seen the recent data on his campaign, it's in the toilet, and his ratings in Florida are way down. People are fleeing Florida in droves because of his anti-immigration policies, because of the fact they can't get flood insurance thanks to his policies, because of the threats to kids and the undermining of education. I mean, it's just going to be, a really interesting moment to watch. All right. Speaking of which, reminder, we have the Republican debate tomorrow night. I will be watching that and live posting it on Threads. I am expecting that this is going to be an opportunity for Ramaswamy to try to make more inroads. He's currently polling second in New Hampshire. Dude's, I don't know, not just a liar, but also crazy, and constantly getting trapped, by the way, by reporters in lies and hypocrisy. Not that has ever stopped Donald Trump. And, my bet here is that Ramaswamy is essentially making a pitch to be the vice president on Trump's ticket, whatever. We'll see how that plays out. It's worth watching simply to see how the dynamics are playing out. But I'm also just going to point out that as of right now, they're essentially all in a race for second place. So, it will be there, and I'll be watching it live. All right. I'm going to come back to the GOP ticket in a second, but I had a bunch of questions about the CARE court here in California, which was the subject of a 60 Minutes series of interviews on Sunday night. I still have not had time to watch the interviews, but I'm going to tell you all that I've done a little bit of deep digging on the CARE court itself, and I want people to understand what it is. All right. So many of you have heard me talk about the importance of defunding the police. And, I know there's plenty of like people, usually white men on our side of the fence, who think that it's like terrible messaging for the Democratic Party. It's not. Okay. And I'm going to, I've said so many times here why this is the case, but the point of defunding the police is that you are able, if you do not fund the militarization of police and you re-envision policing, to consider putting into place other community service programs that actually do good and shift responsibility that is currently given to police forces to people who are more qualified to handle some community-based crises that don't actually need police intervention. Okay, so let's just talk for a second about the CARE court. What it does is it is a program. It's a novel program that is designed to put people who are unhoused, who are struggling with severe mental illness. We're talking like schizophrenia, like severe depression, that also have some component of addiction and substance abuse. They don't have to, but many of them do, into a novel program called the CARE Court that is designed to help get those individuals services that they can't get through police. All right. So things like mental health counseling, medication, housing. All right. And what it does is it puts them under the supervision of this novel arm of the court system, the CARE Court, for 24 months. All right. Now, there are some critics of this new CARE Court, which my county, by the way, is one of the counties that is a part of the experimental program. So I'm going to be really interested to see how this plays out here locally. But there are some critics who are saying that it's like forcing people into housing and it's forcing mentally ill people to get treatment. And I am, always, always, always wanting to hear from affected communities about the way in which government policies are likely to impact them. All right. So there are some criticisms about the idea that, for instance, you have to comply with the conditions of the care court to stay in treatment. All right. And that may mean that you are forced into housing when you want to be unhoused. I just have to say, though, that I think that there needs to be more experimental programs like this that do exactly the kind of thing of taking authority away from the police and prison industrial complex and into other novel means of addressing societal concerns. And so, there may be people who don't want to be housed and they don't want a bed. And I think that there's got to be a way of accommodating those folks while at the same time providing services to the community that help to redress some of the concerns here, right? And I'm not talking about the concerns of like bougie white people that there's unhoused people on the street. I'm actually legitimately talking about the fact that there are people with really serious mental illness who can't get treatment. And there are people with addiction who would really like to stop being addicts who can't get treatment. And the care court is a novel way of addressing that. All right. And we'll see, I'm again, like, I think there are pros and cons. All right. And also, I think that we've got to start being more open to other ways of addressing these concerns than just like police going in, sweeping camps of unhoused people out, busing those people out of cities where they're unseen, and, fundamentally leaving people with very grave mental illness who need help, like to fend for themselves. So that's my 2 cents on that. And again, I say that all with the caveat that I did not watch the 60 Minutes piece. I haven't had time. I'll just tell you all, like, I'm swamped right now between 5 days a week of broadcasting and work. But I will find time to review it. And that's my initial takeaway. I mean, so many people who are involved in abolition and police and prison abolition especially, have been calling for a very long time for other forms of societal remediation that look a lot like this. So again, it's just incredibly critical that we start to be open to solving problems in ways that we have not considered before, because that's progress. I think that we'll have to see how this one plays out. Okay. Final question for the day. I was asked, what's plan B for the GOP in the event that Trump is in prison, come the Republican National Convention? I've talked about this like a bit. I haven't actually addressed it as directly as this question was asked. So let me just say this, okay? I don't think they have a plan B. And I think that that's the nature of the cult. And it's the nature of the fact that they are at the moment all in. And they are all in because every single person who's running needs Trump's base. There are very few people. Asa Hutchinson is one who, by the way, did not qualify for the second debate. That's how well he's doing. There are very few Republicans, Chris Christie being another, who will be on the debate stage, who are pointing out that it is a fool's errand to have a nominee who is facing 91 separate charges in 4 different places under indictment. I don't think they care. And I frankly don't think that there is much that will ever be done about this unless and until he's actually incarcerated in advance. And then it's going to be a free-for-all. And even then, they may still run him. I mean, it's absolute political suicide, but they kind of are making their bed in that direction. So, I think that, we can all take a page from Cassidy Hutchinson on this, again, to circle back to where the broadcast started today, because she was really adamant last night that this is their last chance, that like if they don't step away from Trump, the party is pretty much dead. And I don't think she's wrong about that. I mean, for God's sake, like it's just repeating what Lindsey Graham said on Twitter in 2016, which is that if they nominate Trump, they're going to get destroyed and they'll deserve it. So I'm not really worried about it. And, I just have to say that I don't know how you debate for president from prison. I don't know how you campaign for president from prison. And I'm not sure that's going to stop him or the GOP anyhow. I don't think they have a plan, just like they didn't have a platform in 2020. And it is what it is. And there are plenty of arguably wiser, moderate Republican voices like Mitt Romney, like Cassidy Hutchinson, like Asa Hutchinson, like, Chris Christie's not a moderate, but, various folks who are calling for the party. And moderate means very little, honestly, in the context of today's GOP, but that's beside the point. The point is that there are very few people who are advising the GOP to wake up. And even though there have been these rumblings inside the Federalist Society and elsewhere that the 14th Amendment should ban him, and we have ongoing litigation that's going to figure out whether or not he's going to be removed from the ballot in Colorado and elsewhere, I am not expecting some big come to Jesus moment awakening where the GOP and the RNC are suddenly like, oh, maybe we don't want to get behind this guy. I just don't see it happening. So, they will make their bed. And frankly, I think the result for us one way or another is going to be an absolute bloodbath for the GOP and at the polls. I mean, I don't mean that, again, I hate that I have to say this. I don't mean that in the streets. I mean it at the ballot box. And I think that that's not a bad thing. I mean, I think we may very well be on the cusp in 2024 of being able to finally make incredibly important societal change, because the Republican Party is going to be done. I'm just going to mention, by the way, there's this really bonkers article this morning in the New York Times that says the polls show that Americans are completely disaffected with Biden. So why do the Democrats keep winning? So I'm just going to tell you all, yesterday we talked about how you can't trust the polls. It's like I read this article in the New York Times and I was like, they're so close to figuring it out. But point being that the Democrats keep winning everywhere. And again, as I said yesterday, look at these special elections where seats that in districts that went for Trump in 2020 are being flipped by 15, 16, 17 points in favor of Democrats. There's a lot of reason to be optimistic and hopeful right now. And that does not mean stop doing the work. Again, I have to remind everybody, figure out now. I said it yesterday when I was in a much worse mood. Figure out now what it is that you're going to do between now and the first primary in your state and get to work, because it's still got to be an all-out effort from every single one of us to make sure that the result is what we want it to be. All right. Much love, everyone. I will see all of you here tomorrow. I will see you all online in the interim. And I hope you all have a really great Tuesday. All right. Much love to everyone. And don't forget to like this, by the way, on YouTube. The likes really matter. Don't forget to subscribe. I have to say all of that. You can also head on over to patreon.com/resistance live if you want to ask questions in advance of every single broadcast. There's a question feed that goes up 2 hours before every broadcast. You can ask questions. I will do my best to answer them. And also you can join us on Sunday for Progressive Coffee Hour. I'm supposed to be getting an update from Britt on swag in the upper tiers very, very soon. Thank you all so much. Those of you who have been very patient on that front. But you can join us and support the work here. Our team is made up of 4 people right now, 3 of whom are single moms, 1 of whom is a trans person, and we all would love to have your support. Okay. So thank you all so much. And again, much love to our ongoing Patreon subscribers. And I will see you guys all here tomorrow at regular time. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you then.